Welcome, coin hunters. In a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, a man named Thomas was cleaning out his late father's garage. It had been years since anyone had gone through the rows of rusting tools, stacked boxes, and long-forgotten shelves filled with jars of nails, bolts, and other dusty hardware. Thomas wasn't looking for anything valuable. He simply wanted to honor his father's memory by organizing the space they had once worked in together on summer weekends. While clearing one of the drawers beneath an old workbench, Thomas found a coffee can full of coins. Most of them were ordinary, nickels, quarters, a few faded silver dollars. But what caught his eye was a handful of 1-cent coins that had, somehow, retained their original shine. They looked untouched by time. Among them was a bright 1996 Lincoln cent, its copper surface glowing warmly under the flickering garage light. Something about it felt different. He placed it aside, thinking maybe it was just nostalgia. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of him. He retrieved the coin and examined it more carefully. At first glance, it looked like any other penny. Lincoln's profile, the words, "I in God we trust," "Liberty," and the date, 1996. But when he tilted the coin, something unusual happened. The surface shimmered in a way that didn't seem normal for a circulated cent. The lettering appeared slightly raised and unusually bold, and the mint luster had a brilliance he'd only seen in proof coins before. Unsure of what he had, Thomas decided to show it to a local coin dealer. The dealer's eyes widened the moment he held it under the magnifier. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "It looks like a 1996 Lincoln cent, possibly struck on a bronze planchet or maybe a transitional error. The color, weight, and sharpness of a strike. This isn't just a regular penny." Intrigued, Thomas agreed to send the coin to a grading service for authentication. It returned certified and labeled with what numismatists call a major mint error. Some 1996 Lincoln cents had been mistakenly struck using older bronze planchets that hadn't been used officially since the early 1980s. Others were misstruck off-center, on foreign planchets, or with double dies, minting anomalies that are exceedingly rare and heavily desired by collectors. Because the U.S. Mint typically uses zinc-coated planchets for cents minted after 1982, any deviation from that norm, especially involving bronze or copper alloys, is viewed as a significant error. Combine that with sharp detail, brilliant mint state condition, and unique characteristics like off-center strikes or double die features, and suddenly, a 1-cent coin can transform into a collector's dream. That Thomas's coin drew interest from multiple collectors and rare coin specialists. Some speculated it was struck on a leftover planchet from an earlier minting batch. Others believed it was a transitional error. One expert noted the unusual rim and slightly thicker weight, indicators of a wrong planchet error. Whatever the exact cause, one thing was certain. This was no ordinary penny. Word of the coin spread online through numismatic forums and collector circles. Thomas received offers ranging from a few $1,000s to over $20,000. He was stunned. How could something so small, something that had sat in a coffee can for decades, suddenly be worth more than his car? Eventually, he agreed to put the coin up for auction. The event drew a respectable crowd, but it was the online bidding that surprised everyone. The auctioneer described the coin's rarity, its exceptional condition, and the unique error. Bidding quickly surpassed expectations. One collector from Texas placed a decisive bid that held strong until the gavel fell. For Thomas, it was a surreal moment. He had come to his father's garage for closure, not for treasure. But in the process of cleaning up, he'd uncovered a rare piece of American history. A coin minted in 1996 that somehow slipped through the mint's strict quality controls and emerged as one of the finest examples of an error coin from that year. The average person. A penny is just a penny. Something tossed into a jar, dropped on sidewalks, or forgotten at the bottom of a drawer. But to collectors, certain pennies are clues to mysteries within the U.S. Mint's long history of production. They tell stories of accidents, changes in materials, or even overlooked processes that resulted in unexpected variations. The 1996 Lincoln cent is one such coin. While most of them are entirely ordinary, a few rare errors stand out. Off-center strikes, double dies, wrong planchet strikes, and unusually high-grade copper examples. These rarities are often discovered by accident, by someone paying just a little more attention to the change in their pocket, or by someone like Thomas, dusting off memories in a family garage. The beauty of numismatics is that the line between ordinary and extraordinary is sometimes no thicker than a coin's edge. What separates a 1-cent coin from a 5-figure treasure is often something invisible to the casual observer, but instantly recognizable to the trained EYE.S. Oh, the next time you receive a handful of change, take a closer look. Because that simple penny might just be one of the rare 1996 Lincoln cents with an error so valuable, it can command thousands at auction. And if you're lucky enough to discover one of these extremely rare 1996 Lincoln cents, you could be holding a coin valued at $1,700 for minor errors, $24,500 for higher grade anomalies, and up to $153,000 for the finest, most pristine mint error specimens ever found. That's the magic of a penny with a hidden story. In the humid summer of 1972, on a quiet street in rural Kentucky, a young boy named Jeremy was rummaging through his grandfather's dusty old cigar box. It was filled with odds and ends, buttons, worn keys, marbles, and a few coins that seemed like they hadn't been touched in decades. Jeremy had always loved visiting his grandfather's home, not because it was particularly luxurious or exciting, but because it was filled with stories waiting to be uncovered. That day, among the jumbled relics, he found a copper coin that would unknowingly alter the course of his life. That IT was a 1972 1-cent coin. Just a penny. It felt warm in his hand from the afternoon sun, and the image of Abraham Lincoln gleamed under a shaft of light from the attic window. To most people, it would have seemed completely ordinary. But even as a child, Jeremy was fascinated by the idea that things could be special even if they didn't look like it on the surface. So he kept the coin in his shoebox of treasures, eventually moving it to a proper coin folder when he became a teenager and more serious about his small collection. Years passed. Jeremy grew up, went to college, got married, and started working as a teacher. His coin collection remained intact, stored away safely, though rarely opened, until one rainy afternoon decades later, when a documentary on RareCoins sparked his memory. They were talking about the 1972 Lincoln cent, specifically a version with a double die on the obverse that had caused quite a stir in numismatic circles. Only a few dozen were known in pristine condition, and they were considered a key error for Lincoln cent collectors. Curious, Jeremy pulled out his old folder and flipped through the pages. There it was, his childhood penny, still gleaming slightly, remarkably untouched by time. He turned on his magnifier lamp and brought the coin close. The words, "I in God we trust," and "liberty" seemed strangely thick. Not just bold, but doubled. He blinked, leaned closer. The date itself, 1972, appeared almost like it had a shadow. His hands began to shake. A quick search online confirmed his growing suspicion. The 1972 double die obverse Lincoln cent was indeed real and highly sought after. The doubling, especially on the words and date, had to be distinct and dramatic. Jeremy took high-resolution photos and posted them on a coin forum, asking for advice. The replies came in fast. That might be the real thing. That doubling is textbook. You need to get it graded. Excitement turned into action. He sent the coin to a reputable coin grading company, carefully packaged and insured. The wait felt longer than he expected, but one day, a slim, secure envelope arrived. He opened it slowly. Inside was his coin, now encased in a clear holder with a crisp label. 1972 double die obverse Lincoln cent, MS-66 read. Jeremy could barely believe it. He had held onto this coin for 50 years, not knowing its true value. The MS-66 grade indicated that it was in superb condition, one of the best preserved examples. The coin's vibrant red color, a hallmark of uncirculated copper cents, added even more to its allure. Experts confirmed it. This was one of the finest examples known to exist. Word spread quickly among collectors. Rare coin dealers reached out with offers. Some wanted to feature it in numismatic magazines. One private collector from New York City offered to buy it immediately, no questions asked. But Jeremy decided to take the coin to auction, where it would be seen by the entire community and appreciated for what it was, a once-forgotten gem now shining on the grand stage. The auction was held in a large hall packed with eager bidders, buzzing with anticipation. As the auctioneer introduced the coin, he explained the rarity of the 1972 double die obverse, how it was caused by a misaligned hubbing process at the Philadelphia Mint, and how collectors had been hunting pristine examples for decades. A hush fell over the room as bidding began. The numbers climbed swiftly, outpacing even the auction house's own expectations. When the final bid was called and the gavel struck the podium, The crowd applauded. Jeremy's childhood penny had sold for a staggering six-figure sum. He watched, stunned, as the figure appeared on the screen. His treasure, once plucked from a forgotten box in his grandfather's attic, had made history. But for Jeremy, the value wasn't just monetary. It was about the journey, about how a single copper coin, so small and seemingly insignificant, had survived 50 years in pristine condition, waiting to reveal its secret. It was a reminder that sometimes the rarest treasures aren't found in bank vaults or behind museum glass, but tucked away in ordinary places, held in the hands of children or forgotten in dusty drawers. The story of the 1972 Lincoln cent is one that resonates with collectors around the world. That year, the Philadelphia Mint inadvertently struck a small number of coins with a double die on the obverse. These errors occurred when the coin die was misaligned during its creation, causing the image to be impressed twice in slightly different positions. The result is a striking visual effect. Letters and numbers appear doubled, giving the coin an unmistakable look. While millions of regular cents were minted in 1972, only a few thousand of these double die errors made it into circulation, and fewer still survived in high grades. Collectors prize them not only for their rarity, but for the clarity of the doubling. Most circulated coins are worn and dull, but examples in mint state red, brilliant and untarnished, are treasures that often fetch tens of thousands at auction at SO. The next time you come across a 1972 penny, take a moment. Look closely. Examine the details. Because buried in ordinary pocket change, there could be a coin with a story of its own, waiting to be discovered. A coin that, under the right light and with the right eyes, could turn into something extraordinary. And if you're lucky enough to find one of those rare 1972 double die obverse Lincoln cents in brilliant mint condition, you just might be holding a coin worth between $19,500 and $124,000. Proof that sometimes even a penny can be priceless. In a quiet Midwestern town, nestled between the gently rolling plains and long-forgotten railroad tracks, lived a man named Harold. A retired schoolteacher with a love for American history, Harold spent most of his days in his small study, surrounded by books, maps, and an old wooden desk that had belonged to his grandfather. But what truly captivated Harold's interest more than anything was coins. Not because they were made of precious metals or because they held high monetary value, but because every coin told a story of the country, of the mint that struck it, and of the hands it passed through. Among his collection, carefully tucked into a dusty album between pages filled with Lincoln cents, was a coin he had nearly overlooked for decades. It was a 1961 cent piece, a penny that on the surface appeared just like the millions of others struck that year. But something about this particular coin always drew his eye. The luster hadn't faded, the details were unusually sharp, and the date, 1960, stood out with an unusual boldness, particularly the shape of the numerals. He had held on to it since his college days, when he received it as change from a small grocery store on the edge of campus. Something about it made him keep it separate, though he never fully understood why. Years later, while reading a numismatic magazine, Harold came across an article about small and large date varieties of the 1960 Lincoln cent. As it turned out, that year was unique. Both large date and small date designs were minted in Philadelphia and Denver, and collectors were always on the hunt for transitional varieties, especially where mismatched dies were used or striking errors occurred. Harold went back to his album and pulled out the coin. Using a magnifier, he began to study it more carefully than he ever had before. The date was indeed different, more compact and sharply defined. The zero in 1960 was smaller and rounder than most others he had seen. Excitement slowly crept in that he took photos and posted them on a collector's forum, asking for opinions. Responses started pouring in. One user messaged him privately. "You may have a Philadelphia small date in exceptional condition," they said, "but it looks like it could also be a transitional die clash, possibly even an overstrike error. This isn't common. Get it authenticated immediately." Harold's heart began to race. He had always hoped to stumble across something rare, but never believed he actually had. Encouraged by the messages, he submitted the coin to a professional grading service. Weeks passed. The envelope arrived, and inside was a sealed case with the coin now officially graded. The label read, 1960 small date Lincoln cent, double die obverse, MS 66 red. The designation confirmed that the coin not only had the small date variety, but also featured a double die on the obverse, an error caused when the coin die receives more than one misaligned impression during the manufacturing process. These doubling effects, particularly on the words liberty and I in God we trust, were faint but visible under magnification, enough to make it a recognized error coin. Numismatists confirmed that fewer than a handful of such error coins from 1960 had ever been certified in such pristine red condition. Most have been circulated, lost their luster, or were never recognized for the anomalies they carried. And of the few that were identified, nearly all had long been absorbed into private collections. Harold now possessed a penny, just 1 cent, that had turned into a national numismatic curiosity. It didn't take long for news to travel. Coin dealers and collectors began contacting him. Offers started modestly, but then grew rapidly. One major collector from the East Coast flew in to see the coin in person, offering Harold a 5-figure sum on the spot. Harold, always one to think carefully, decided to consign the coin to an upcoming national coin auction where it could reach a larger audience and receive the attention it clearly deserved out on the night of the auction. With dozens of eyes on the screen and paddles raised high, the coin was introduced with great fanfare. The auctioneer spoke of its rarity, its condition, its error type, and its place in the strange dual design history of 1960. A bidding war broke out between 2 anonymous participants, one bidding online and the other on the floor. In a matter of minutes, the coin's price jumped from 4 figures to 5. And when the gavel finally fell, Harold's humble penny had sold for more than $70,000. The crowd erupted in polite applause, and Harold sat in awe, not because of the windfall he had just received, but because something he had carried in his coin folder for over 50 years had finally told its story. The Lincoln cent has long been a staple of American coinage. First minted in 1909 to commemorate Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, it was the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. Its reverse bore wheat stalks until 1958, and from 1959 onward, it displayed the Lincoln Memorial. By 1960, the design had settled into familiarity, but what made that year special were the variations in the date and the errors that slipped past the mint's watchful eyes. Coins with small or large dates, double dies, repunched mint marks, and off-center strikes. All these anomalies became key points of fascination for collectors. While hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents were minted in 1960, only a tiny fraction possessed both the small date variety and a visible double die in mint state red condition. These are the kinds of coins that elevate themselves from pocket change to treasure, silent testaments to the chaos and imperfection behind the cold machinery of a U.S. mint. For collectors, the message is clear: no coin is too small to matter. Sometimes the most valuable finds aren't golden or silver, but copper, waiting patiently in drawers, jars, and forgotten folders. Every once in a while, a penny can change your life. So the next time you come across a 1960 Lincoln cent, don't be so quick to toss it aside. Study it. Hold it up to the light. Look for the slight imperfections that make it unique. Because if you're fortunate enough to discover a 1960 US 1-cent coin with a small date, double die obverse, and preserved in brilliant uncirculated condition, you just might be holding a piece of American minting history worth between $28,000 and $76,000. Not bad for a coin that started its life worth just a single cent.